James Cameron is racist for Avatar? According to Critical Drinker, yes. He also gets exposed for spreading fake news and becoming a parody of himself. A crash so iconic, even Disney couldn't flop this bad. Critical Drinker, a once important film critic in the industry, has devolved into a character of himself. He is now harming the industry that he once tried to protect. Nowadays, Critical Drinker, or Will Jordan, is giddier when reviewing a movie he doesn't like than when reviewing a movie he says is good. I'm personally going to tell my kids that this is Will Jordan reviewing a movie he doesn't like. He assumes failure before evidence exists. And when reality contradicts his narrative, he ignores it. If you're a member of his audience, I'm sorry, but you've been used more than Tim Walz' tampons. He lies straight at you and will milk you for everything that you have. He is someone that is awful for the fandom, awful for franchises, awful for the industry, and we as a community can do better. But hey, at this point, this is just conjecture, so let's get right into it. Now, don't get me wrong, there was even a time that I was a fan of him, because after COVID and before and directly after, Hollywood needed a swift kick in the ass. They began prioritizing representation and agenda over genuine, real storytelling. And that is not the formula to make movies that stand the test of time. And many of the franchises and IPs that a lot of us grew up with fell victim to this deranged activism instead of objectively trying to make the best movies and best stories possible. Star Wars is a perfect example of this and a brand that still has not fully recovered. Many people are predicting that the upcoming Mandalorian and Grogu movie is going to be a box office failure, but personally, I'm not too sure about that. Marvel is a perfect example of one that fantastically tried this and failed miserably. And in conjunction with attendance dropping with COVID, a large portion never ended up returning to movie theaters after the epidemic was over. And a lot of this is due to the quality of movies degrading. Marvel, in a peculiar move, instead of creating movies for their target audience, tried to create a new audience while ignoring the old one. It was a very unusual strategy that led to below subpar results, such as The Marvels, Secret Invasion, Quantumania, and many more. Not only that, Marvel stopped looking at reasoning. They once viewed Marvel Comics as a testing ground. If a character popped off or was able to carry a series or a story, then that was a sign that, hey, they may translate well into live action. But they decided to make movies that they just wanted to make. For example, Ironheart and Miss Marvel, they were never selling titles. Their comics never sold well. But despite this, we got 2 shows dedicated to them with the promise of more. Basically, Elizabeth Holmes level confidence with Theranos level results. And while these random characters were getting solo projects, many of the ones that fans were demanding were getting sidelined, such as James Rhodes' War Machine, Blade, Ghost Rider, Venom, or actual multiverse stories like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man in Spider-Man 4. And it's not just Marvel, it's Star Trek, it's Star Wars, it's Doctor Who, Terminator, Lord of the Rings, and the list goes on. And during this time, channels like the Critical Drinker grew enormously. Fans who missed the earlier era of storytelling, where plot mattered more than agenda, where character development mattered more than representation, found a voice who rallied against what seemed like a corporate takeover of sludge and slop with no end in sight. And studios needed an ass kicking from the box office perspective and from the public perception side of things. And it was working. Captain Marvel, for example, was once a billion-dollar movie, one of the most successful movies of all time, but yet its sequel, The Marvels, failed to make a profit. This is almost unheard of. Star Wars is another example where a franchise that was basically a printing money machine were launching shows that weren't even charting. Unbelievable. The movies to succeed in the box office were ones that put aside politically correct agendas, such as Godzilla vs. Kong, who, despite being simultaneously released on both HBO Max and movie theaters, made massive amounts of money in both realms. Now look, not all studios, not all creators, not all writers, not all editors, but many of them saw what was happening. Massive loss in profits, tarnishing of the brands, degrading of the IPs, and the future was not looking bright. This required a massive course correction. Now, guys like Critical Drinker and Nerdrotic will argue companies like Marvel post-Endgame has been total abysmal garbage. Nothing redeeming, and they might as well end it all here. They will go as far as saying Marvel is more dead than Uncle Ben, superhero films are dead, and this is where they lost the plot. Loki Season 1 was genuinely a baller post-Endgame production that fans thoroughly enjoyed. Yes, there are exceptions, but look at the facts, fans enjoyed it. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is universally praised and is seen as one of the better films in the franchise. Loki Season 2 was a step down, but was still enjoyable. X-Men 97, while set in a separate continuity, was released as part of the Phase 5 slate, and my god, one of the best animated superhero seasons in years. And of course, we got Deadpool and Wolverine, where Disney only removed one joke, which happened to involve Mickey Mouse. If Russell Brand had that level of restraint, he might still have a career. And you can't talk about post-Endgame Marvel movies that are enjoyable without mentioning Spider-Man No Way Home. We of course got the rework of Daredevil Born Again. It was originally intended to be a reboot of the series. They were going to completely ignore the Netflix show as if it never happened, but due to fan demand, the studios listened, course corrected, and made the proper adjustments. That is a win. And of course, we got Thunderbolt, which in my opinion holds up as one of the better introductory Marvel movies in the franchise. Which, by the way, Critical Drinker has referred to Thunderbolts as a girl boss movie, which is completely absurd. First off, all the women in that movie literally got beat up by a man or multiple men throughout the movie, and the men consistently had better feats than characters such as Yelena. So he has no idea what he talked about and is more evidence that he writes reviews before he even sees the movies. And he also did this into the lead up with Fantastic Four. In June, he posted, "Things aren't looking great for Fantastic Four," while promoting a video titled The Fantastic Four Return of the MCU ? Implying the reboot would succumb to a dreaded all-female agenda. This was based on unverified speculation that Sue Storm would lead the team rather than awaiting facts. After the movie's release and contradicted these claims, Critical Drinker finally conceded, and this is one of the few times he actually admitted fault, where he said, well, we were wrong about Fantastic Four, in a follow-up review of the film. He famously did this with Indiana Jones 5, where he said the trailer confirmed Indy would be erased and replaced by a female sidekick, which never happened. And Critical Drinker is like this about Hollywood as a whole. Movie theaters are dead, the movie industry is dying, every franchise is ruined. He mocks movies before we see any promotional material. A perfect example of that is him consistently saying he thinks Avengers Doomsday will be a bad movie. This was before a teaser trailer, before any promotional photos, before virtually anything. And Critical Drinker, who I think at one time was coming from a genuine, well-intentioned place, has devolved into a caricature of himself who no longer cares about the truth. A perfect example of this is on December 18th. He shared an unverifiable news story that was proven to be fake news. Did he comment saying he was wrong? No. Did he retweet himself, clearing the air with his fans and audience so that they don't spread fake news themselves? No. Did he do anything to address the record? No. Because he doesn't care about the truth. He lies to his audience constantly with the goal of making money so he can drink off into the sunset. Don't be used like a Logan Paul crypto zoo investor. And then on December 21st, he implied James Cameron is racist. Which, by the way, is what he says about the left. That they've over-politicized everything and that they are way too frequent in throwing the race card. But again, this is the same guy who cancels people all the time, but calls it consequence culture. And because he renames it that way, it makes it okay. He said, Anyone else disappointed by the lack of human diversity in Avatar? Why, there's barely a single non-white react to be found in this aggressive, militaristic, expansionist, colonial faction. I'm sure that's a total coincidence though. End quote. Now let's be clear, is he questioning how all the human heroes that are fighting alongside the Na'vis are white? No. He only wants there to be minorities among the villains, which tells you how he thinks. And here's a tweet from Son of Geigen, who summarized the Avatar situation incredibly nicely. So here's a question directly for Critical Drinker. Was James Cameron racist when he made the hero cast in Terminator 1, 2, and 3 mostly and all white? Was he racist when he made all the villains white in Terminator 1, 2, and 3? I don't know, it's almost like James Cameron hires a lot of white people for both heroes and villains. And here's the irony of all of this. Back in July, Critical Drinker and I had a back and forth involving Superman. He stated, "It's wild how hard people are trying to construct a political narrative around Superman. Maybe it really is just a movie and should be judged as such." End quote. Now he certainly didn't do this with Avatar, huh? Now the top comment was my response, which I said, "You're largely at fault for this culture. For example, you call Thunderbolts a girl boss movie that was cringe. It wasn't." End quote. Critical Drinker has politicized every single movie because he has put them all under the umbrella of what he calls failing movie studios in a dying industry. He makes blanket statements saying things like superhero movies are dead. Now, what is the solution? How should we handle movies? We absolutely should be holding studios' feet to the fire and demanding the highest quality stories with the best production the budget can afford. We absolutely should demand studios, writers, and editors to be carefully deliberate when dealing with the IPs that many of us love so much. And much of this comes from well-intentioned places. We should also respect the thousands of people who work on movies and shows and give their productions a genuine chance. That means not throwing them under the bus before we see a single photo or a teaser trailer. That doesn't mean branding the films and those involved in a certain light when they haven't even shared a single piece of marketing or behind the scenes or real footage of the movie whatsoever. It means while calling out bad movies and shows, celebrating the wins as they come and praising those who get it right. If you want to analyze production, if you want to analyze movies and TV shows objectively and independently, you've come to the right place. Subscribe for more.